What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Trucker 219. So today we're doing a stories from states, and one that I've quite honestly been a little bit hesitant to do. Today we're doing from Ohio, and the reason why I've been so hesitant is what happened in this story may or may not be a little bit illegal. Let's go. So I'm under the belief that there's two things of a man that you don't mess with: his money and his family, at least not without consequences. So some time ago, I was working for a company out of Ohio, and I had been working with them off and on for about 2.5 years. And this job specifically was a 1099 position, meaning it wasn't W-2. Now, there's a lot of controversy in the industry whether or not a 1099 trucker should be legal or not. However, I was a relatively young driver at the time, so I didn't know any better, and it was working all right for me right up until it wasn't. So if anybody's checked out my stories from states before, I did one for Kentucky, and that story is kind of where this story takes off. So to sum up that story real quick, I was driving, a car came into my lane, I merged over onto what little shoulder there was, but the road gave out and I went over an embankment. And it caused a lot of damage to both the truck and the trailer. Now, anytime there's damage to a truck and a trailer, a company is required to have insurance to cover those damages. However, there's still a deductible to be paid in order to have those damages covered. So after that incident, I had gone home for about 2 weeks. The whole time I was thinking I was going to get fired for this situation, even though it wasn't my fault. This truck still got severely damaged and I was really worried about my job. But that company called me up and said, hey, just go ahead and hop in a rental car and come up here to the office and we'll work out a deal. I said, okay, that sounds great. I'm glad to have my job back, and not have to go looking out for another job. So I went into the office and had a phone conversation with the owner of the company. And during this conversation, we had worked out to where I would be responsible for the deductible, not the company. Now, looking back, I know this is a terrible mistake and I should have never agreed to it. I should have walked out the door right then and there. However, I thought I was doing the honorable thing by taking care of the deductible. I made a mistake, I was owning it, and taking responsibility for my actions. And also, I was just really glad to have a job. I had a family to feed. So that deductible ended up being $5,000 for the truck, the trailer, and the cargo. Now, prior to this, I was actually looking to get out of that company. In general, I just hadn't found a job yet. So the deal was I stay on and drive with the company and work on paying off that deductible. So over the next 6-7 months, I was working really diligently, putting a little bit back each week towards paying off that deductible. Some weeks I was able to put more, some weeks I was able to put less. And about 5 months into paying off this deductible, I get a call from the owner and he says, I'm going to let you off the hook. I'm only paying $2,500, so go ahead and finish paying that off and then you're all clear, no worries. So at that point, I was about $800 shy of paying that off at the reduced debt. So with that, I was super thankful that he was forgiving that bit of debt, but I knew I was wanting to get off of the road at that time. So I was looking for a local job and something with a little bit more pay, maybe a regional position. So I knew, okay, it's only going to take me about a month to pay this off and then I'm all free and clear. So I started looking for another job, something local or regional, something to where I could be home a little bit more often. So as I'm looking for jobs, I found one that I was okay with going to work for. So the right thing to do at that point is to put in a 2 weeks notice. So I went ahead and talked to my fleet manager and said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and put my 2 weeks notice in. I will have that debt paid off. I'm free and clear. I'm good to go. Well, the fleet manager ended up talking to the owner of the company and let him know what my intentions were as far as moving on to a different company. And a couple of days later, I got another phone call. And this phone call wasn't as nice. He went on to inform me that he only reduced the amount that I owed with the plan that I was going to stay on and work for them for longer. I said, no, that was never the plan at all. I've been trying to get out. If I didn't owe this debt, I wouldn't have been here now. So at that time, he had threatened to say, okay, well, then I'm not going to be able to reduce that debt. You're going to have to pay off the whole thing. I said, well, I don't think that's very fair since we already made an agreement. Well, he said, I'll think about it and I'll get back to you. And at that point, I was fuming. I had a plan set up. I had already talked to a company, got everything arranged to where I was going to move on to another company. This would mean that I would have to let that company down. And also this would delay my progress in the trucking industry. So rightfully so, I was very upset. I was frustrated and really trying to figure out a way to get out of this situation. I felt like I was trapped. I felt like I couldn't do anything other than just pay off this debt. A couple of days later, he let me know, hey, don't worry about it. If you got to move on, you got to move on. It is what it is. So I went ahead and I moved on to that next company. But some time had passed and I had talked to a couple of other people in the industry and they told me that it wasn't right for a company to make me pay for their deductible. So once finding out this information, I felt slighted. I felt like he stole money from me. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If you go into business as a truck owner or company owner, it's your responsibility to pay for your own deductibles. And add to the fact that the accident wasn't my fault to begin with, so I shouldn't be responsible for it at all. And accidents, especially ones that are not the driver's fault, are an occupational hazard of the industry. Things happen sometimes that can't be controlled. And a driver can only do so much to prevent the incident from happening, and sometimes it's just unavoidable. So now about 6 months had passed since I had left that company, and this whole incident kept on stewing with me, and I couldn't let it go. It was frustrating me. I felt like I got ripped off. I felt like I got stole from. I felt like I was held hostage for no reason. So I made a plot for some revenge. Now, being that I had worked for the company that charged me the deductible, I knew of a drop lot that they would use every so often to drop one or two of their trailers while they were waiting for new drivers to come in and pick up those trailers. Now, mind you, this company only used one trailer per driver. There was no drop and hook. The trailer you got is the trailer that you were with. So it's your responsibility to keep it clean, keep it maintained, all that stuff. So if there was a trailer that was in a drop lot, it just wasn't being used by anybody. So one day I had got a trip that was heading right through that area where that drop lot was at in Ohio. And I was running out of hours anyway, so I figured, okay, let me go over here to this lot that they do the drop lot at. I'll park there for the night. I remember the gate code, and I'll just tell them that I work for that company if they ask me why I'm parked there. So I thought that was a great plan. I found a spot to park for the night. I knew how to get in. There was no danger of being in a truck stop. And it was a great spot to park and sleep for the night. And it was after hours, so it was unmanned, and I just had to put in the gate code to be able to get in. So that's what I did. Well, I get in there, I find a parking spot right next to one of their trailers. And it's about 11 o'clock at night at this point. It's late, it's dark, and there's nobody in sight. So I thought to myself, how could I get back at this company that ripped me off of $2,500? And then it hit me. There's a perfectly good operational trailer here. I got a box cutter. Let's go ahead and make sure that they are out the money that I gave them. So after sitting there and pondering it for a little bit, I got to work leaving my mark on that company, starting with some wiring for the lights that go to the back of the trailer. Once that was done, the next to go was the airbags of the trailer. While I was getting revenge on this company through the trailer, I had in the back of my mind, okay, what if another driver picks up this trailer? What happens if they don't do a proper pre-trip and they go ahead and hook up to it and start driving down the road? And this is the main reason why I didn't go after the tires or try to loosen up the door on the back of the trailer or cause any other damage that might potentially hurt another truck driver. So I stuck with stuff that's more of an operational issue and not so much of a danger to the driver issue. And once I was through with that, I felt like I had successfully got my revenge on the company. They're going to be out a significant amount of money to make the repairs to that trailer that had got damaged. And like I said at the beginning, there are two things you don't mess with: a man's family and a man's money. And if you do decide to mess with a man's money or family, you better be prepared for some consequences. Now, some of you might be asking the question, why would you go and put this out on the internet and tell everybody that you committed a crime? Some of you might not even believe it's real. And the only reason that I'm telling this story now is because it's been past the statute of limitations in order to file any sort of lawsuit or claim or criminal charges against me. In Ohio, the statute of limitations on destruction of property is 2 years. And also the statute of limitations on vandalism and criminal mischief is 6 years. And all three of those have already passed. So there's no way that they can come after me now. But I'm curious to hear what you think. Do you think this action was justified? Do you think it was fair of me to do that? Whether it was right or wrong, that's not really up for debate. It was most definitely an illegal thing to do. Do I regret doing it? Absolutely not. I'm well aware that it was something that was illegal to do, and there was a high chance that I could get into some trouble for it. Do you think it's fair to take back what has been stolen from you? Or do you think I should have gone about it in a different way? Let me know what you think down below. And also, if you like this Stories from States, don't forget to check out my other Stories from States. I'll leave it in a playlist right here. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. All right? Bye.